So now that we have our API created, you could technically go and start generating a component that's going to retrieve that information from SharePoint and then display it on your web part. Problem with that is that your solution could be nicer. You can have a way of knowing when things are being loaded. So you can have a loading state in place. So you want to have a way to retrieve the data, cache it, save it, and then append new items as the user's creating new items. You can use something like an optimistic update. The beauty about optimistic update is the user immediately sees the change. Let's go ahead and do that part next. We're going to create our hook to get our items from SharePoint. Similar to how we created our API folder, inside of our API folder, I usually like to keep things organized that way. I create a new folder and I call it hooks. Now your web part may just very simple. You might just have one piece of data that you're retrieving. I tend to make web parts that have a lot of different endpoints. I like to model the data to be put into separate lists. So in doing so, there is the need for me to have to retrieve the data from multiple different sources. And so I like to organize everything accordingly. So typically here in the hooks folder, I would actually create another folder for the FAQ. But since I'm not going to be creating a whole bunch of different APIs in here, I'm just basically going to create one hook folder. My recommendation to you is if you have multiple different sources, like you have list A, B, C, D, etc., all the way to Z, create a folder for each one. You'll thank me later. All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and create our hook. Our hook is going to be called use FAQ items.ts. Okay. In our use FAQ items.ts, we're going to be using SWR to get our data using that function that we created in our FAQ API. So here's our FAQ API. Let's put it here to the side. And we're going to fetch all of our items. That's why I put on there use FAQ items. All right. So for that, we're going to import use SWR. And we're going to import the keyed mutator from SWR. All right. And we're going to also import FAQ item from our app props. And we're going to import our fetch function. So import fetch all FAQ items from our fetch API. Another thing that you're going to need for SWR that I hadn't mentioned that I would also suggest putting that in your FAQ API is a URL for your endpoint. For the URL endpoint, I'm going to basically create one. So I'm going to go export const fetch all FAQ items URL. And it's going to be of type string. I don't think that this is accurate, so let's go and look and see how we can, I don't know, call me crazy, but I'd like to be a little bit picky on how I do things. So how do you get that? How would you get that information? So if you don't have access to this, you can use this as a point of reference on how you do that. So here I am in my training site. I'm going to get the items obviously from my FAQ list. So you can see how I get that information. So let me go ahead and say here, items equals await sp.web.list.get by title. And the title is going to be the FAQ list, that items, and console log. All right, don't press Control D yet. We'll go to a network tab, clear that out. We go back to our SharePoint tab, Control D. We go back to our network. Here's our items, and here's our URL. You can copy that, go into the URL, and paste it. Okay. And if you want to do a better way of writing this, you don't have to put the entire site. You just basically put this last part of the API, because obviously you could be deploying this to a different SharePoint. The real reason for this URL is just a way for us to identify using SWR what endpoint we need to trigger mutations. So when we mutate something, we can use this string to say, hey, this is the hook that I'm targeting to go ahead and retrieve that data, or this is the hook that I'm targeting for this update. Along with the fetch all FAQ items, we're going to also import fetch the all FAQ items URL from there as well, from the API. Okay. So once we have those things, we're ready to start creating our reusable SWR hook. So we're going to create export const, use FAQ items, and this is going to return the FAQ items, which is going to be an array of FAQ item. And then it's going to also return if it's loading. So is loading, which is going to be a Boolean. It's going to return a mutation. So mutate, which is going to be keyed mutator. And the type of mutator that it's going to be is of FAQ item. And it will also return an error. So we can return an error. This is going to be an error, or it can be undefined because there was no error. Okay. All right. So now that we have that, we're going to basically create our SWR hook. And you can already see the GitHub Copilot's already kind of alluding to what I'm planning on doing. So I'm going to retrieve the data. So I'm going to create a const data error. Actually, data is loading. I like to kind of follow the same pattern. So you saw in the beginning, of FAQ is loading, mutate, an error. So is loading, mutate, and error. Those are the ones that I'm going to be returning. Sorry. And basically, we're going to use the SWR hook. And the SWR hook is going to fetch all FAQ items. Actually, you have to pass the all FAQ items URL. So we're going to get the FAQ items URL. And then we use our fetcher. Fetch all FAQ items. So you have that URL, which I was talking to you about, that's the way to reset. Essentially, that's how you identify this hook and what it does. Okay. And then we're going to add some options to it. So in our options, we're going to add suspense. So what does suspense do? Sorry, that shouldn't be written like that. Suspense. And we're going to set that to, I'm going to set that to true. And revalidate on focus. And we're going to set that to false. I think I have an error here. Let me see. Oh, this is the error here. Yes. Okay. So we have data is loading, mutate, error, and use SWR. We have our URL, which is a string for our SWR hook. And then we have the items that are going to be fetched using this fetch function. And then in our return statement, in our return, we're going to return the FAQ items. We're going to return if it's loading, mutate, and then error. Now, FAQ items, why am I getting no value exists in scope? Because we called it data. Let's call it FAQ items. Shouldn't call it data. You can cast it. Data is going to be the FAQ items. Is FAQ items loading? And is loading is going to be, is FAQ item loading? Mutate is going to be mutate FAQ items. FAQ items error. Mutate FAQ items and FAQ items error. And now basically we're just gonna change this here. Mutate FAQ items and FAQ items error. All right, so this is our hook. So now our hook is gonna use this fetch function to retrieve the items, and it's gonna cache our items. And here we have an error, revalidate on focus. We created our API for fetching all the items. And this hook, now we're gonna leverage it inside of our application. Thanks for watching. If you find this video helpful, give it a like. If you think someone else can benefit from it, please share it. If you have any questions, please post it in the comments and subscribe. It's free for you, and it really helps me out. Finally, if you can, go ahead and click on that bell icon to get notified when the next video is added.